go. It's morning. It's noon. It's morning and noon somewhere. I think in Israel. All right. Well, let's sort of figure out where we're going. On Friday, we kind of went over what was going to go on today, and it seems that it went on literally without a hitch. You have the President of the United States, half of the American top cabinet, and they are all getting awards and speaking for the second time now in Israel, now at Jerusalem. You cannot imagine the emotions that are running through those that have waited for their loved ones for a very, very, very long time. You don't understand the emotions of a people that have been waiting for someone else's loved ones to come home today, which in the Israeli Jewish way is they all were waiting for their loved ones to come home. Why did I break that sentence apart? I think that David may sort of hopefully gravitate to that, because it is the people of Israel, the Jews of the world, on how we are all interconnected and we are all one. Welcome, everybody, to the Rant Network. How's that for a twister, Mr. Solomon? This is your go-to podcast for unapologetic discussions hosted by David Solomon and myself, Stuart Briscoe. As we tackle a diverse range of topics, candid conversation, bold opinions, whether we're breaking down the latest headlines, exploring culture, debating politics, delving into complexities of modern life, this is a podcast for every perspective. So grab a seat and buckle up, because this should be another thought-provoking podcast. David, 20 are free. And here we are wondering what's next. And we know that the President of the United States is flying to Egypt on the Beast to make plans for what phase 2 should be shaped and whom should be shaping it. But it seems rather curious that 2 of the main players have been left out of that meeting. David?
All right, let's take a step back. And if what Stuart was saying, if you were like so many Jews and Israelis yesterday or a few hours ago, you were up till practically dawn waiting to see those 20 faces return. Stuart, I couldn't make it past 3 a.m. local time. I saw the first 7 get released. With, as you said, without let's call it a Hamas-like hitch. There were no ceremonies. There were no fanfare. There was none of what we saw in the past. And for the first time, we held our breath, Stuart. We held our breath collectively as a nation. And I'm saying a Jewish nation, Israeli nation. And as the day progressed, the amount of people getting into Hostage Square exploded. Now, on the weekend, in case you missed it, Steve Witkoff, Mr. Kushner and his wife Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner, were also at Hostage Square, saying a few words in English. 500,000 people, between 400,000 and 500,000 people were there. And if you can understand that Israel is all of 9 million people, so you can only imagine just do the math of what it could be like in your community if you had that kind of reaction. But people were coming in from all over the country. They wanted to be part of history, a positive history. 2 years ago to the date on the Hebrew calendar of the October 7th massacre that started on the Jewish holiday of Shmini Atzeret, that's when these hostages came from. Jews, Israelis were either watching it on live stream, catching it on the news, wherever they were live. It didn't make a difference. Everyone was tuned into this to see 20 faces come home, because 28, unfortunately, another 28 have died. And as of this morning, only 4 of the 28 dead have been returned. There's a whole question of how the balance may or may ever not come home. But Stuart, the beauty is that this that I've been wearing now for close to 2 years, Stuart, can come off. They're home. This is the first time in 2 years. And that is the elation that every Jew Israeli with a heart has today. And as they look to the next step, as you say, the peace, this is now the question is now what's at stake? Because this is not an Israeli territory per se. Yes, by technically this we could call the Gaza Strip and the West Bank Israeli territory, but I don't want to get into that. It is where Palestinians want to live. And this is where the Palestinians can't seem to live without peace. They do its terror. There's no economics. The education was just filled with hate, as we've talked on numerous occasions. And the world is getting together with Donald Trump leading the charge. As I'm reading this here, also former Prime Minister Tony Blair will be leading this whole idea of creating a Gaza redevelopment until the reformed Palestinian authorities are prepared to take over. Apparently, this Trump-led economic development is going to see and attract international investment. Qatar, Saudi Arabia. If you're in the real estate game, this could be very interesting. I don't know. But what's happening here, Stuart, is now the next phase. The world tried to force a Palestinian state a scant month ago by doing this dumb declaration of the United Nations. That was the way old thinking was. The so-called conventional wisdom. And I use that very sarcastically because I don't think that there is any wisdom behind the people who made a unilateral declaration, because that was just throwing shit into the wind. But here is Donald Trump saying, because that doesn't give Israel security. That doesn't bring stability to the Middle East. That just brings in a new faction, a new problem, and the same old hatred, and the cycle continues. The big fear Israelis have, all the while looking east to Iran and going, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're focusing on these guys, but what about those guys? And while Iran will say that they support this deal, it's all bullshit because they don't care for the Palestinians. Because if they cared for the Palestinians, they wouldn't have fired arbitrary rockets that landed in the West Bank. Nobody, whatever. And if Egypt and Jordan and Lebanon and Syria and all those others really cared about the Palestinians, they would have let them into their country, which they did not. What's about to happen here, Stuart, is this crazy thing that Israel and Hamas are not invited to this, which is not a terrible thing. At first I thought, why not? But Israel actually shouldn't. Let Trump run it, because Trump has succeeded at something that nobody else has.
Nope.
And this is another opportunity, Stuart. I think that with Donald Trump, the president of peace, that's what they called him, Stuart. President of peace. I know the Nobel Committee doesn't think so.
Well, actually, that's actually a misnomer and a mistake. He was in presidents in 15 days over the deciding period, because January 25th is when all nominations have to be sent in based off of material facts. So all what he did in his second term, which I believe and agree with you totally, was definitely earned that prize. He wasn't actually a real candidate of that. So I know that we like to pick on certain things, David, but I just want to correct that.
You could correct me all you want, but the problem is, Stuart?
Yep.
It doesn't matter.
Nope.
The exceptions have been made and things have been done.
For
the entire world. And
no,
so
the Nobel Prize
Stuart. I'm not talking about the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm talking about in general. Other things. People are willing to bend rules because this is a super exceptional situation. But here's the thing, Stuart, and I'm going to pump this back to you. I think this is a crazy alliance. I think that, the last time we saw this was when Bill Clinton tried to bring in a bunch of countries together to fight Saddam Hussein in Iraq, to try to create this weird alliance. This was at the time was a military alliance to defend, the region. And again, Clinton told Israel, stay out of it. We'll take care of you. And at the time, Israel said, yeah, but no. This time, I'm curious, Stuart. What's this alliance going to cook up? Because, the president of Indonesia doesn't want Israelis on his territory because the World Gymnastics Tournament is going to be there, and he doesn't want Jews there. So really, Stuart, what is the world going to actually?
So I was going to go cooking down that path. So thanks for the tee up. Reality is United Nations was created on the heels of the end of World War II, and that became one of the biggest centers of hate that exists in the world. So I do share David's optimism over what may come. And if you can't tell, I'm being very sarcastic, that may come of this new alliance, this new group that's going to dictate what goes on in that strip called the Gaza Strip. Now, I could tell you that what's changed now and where the Indonesian leader, I think, has issues is that the form of religion that they're trying to promote is the 7th century. Let's understand where these people are coming from and where their ideology is sort of remained for now. I'm hopeful because I like to be the optimist sometimes, very rarely, but in this time, that maybe the world will shift its ideology from the 7th century BC to make it somewhere towards the modern era. Again, we've shown pictures, David. We've talked about what the oasis in the Middle East looked like in 1965. And we've shown what it looks like today. It's a regressive society. And society seems to go down that path every so many hundreds of years until it gets a snap and pivots to the future. And maybe this is that opportunity where the world may actually move forward. Yes, the Qataris have been at the center of evil for a very long time, and now they seem to have found themselves a seat at the table of peace. Does that mean the leopard's changed its stripes? Probably not, but you got to be hopeful at some point, because what did we gain? We gained our 20 lives back. We gained 20 bodies, or will gain 20 bodies back. We will have called this issue a good armistice, because that's all this is. It's a ceasefire. It is not a peace of any kind. If you followed the news, which it clearly wasn't very popular, Hamas was going through the strip, murdering and killing anyone that they thought or was in their path that was for this peace arrangement. And I got to tell you, the vacuum that's occurring in the Gaza Strip is probably as dangerous as the vacuum that occurred when the Ayatollah Khomeini took power in Iran. Everyone thought that was going to be peace and the corruption was going to end, and yet that became the birth of the 7th century religion that the Ayatollah chairs. But, we are here today celebrating the lives that have been returned. We talked about it on Friday, that in anticipation of today, and today it's a reality. It's historic. It is a dawn that could be a new Middle East. Does that mean it's going to start today? Does that mean the ripple, the stone in the pond will start today? Maybe. If you're a Jew in the world, you're hopeful. If you're an enemy of the state, you're doubtful. David?
Stuart, what you just said was very interesting, because what you I don't want to dwell on this too much. We'll leave that for another rant. But the haters came out, Stuart, in full force in many, many areas, saying
London,
the struggle hasn't ended.
Nope.
And that's the interesting thing, is now that 2 years later, now all of you who were doubting us and calling us crazy and saying that's not true, these are pro-Palestinian, they're not. What you're seeing here are not people who are pursuing peace, pursuing death. And Stuart, I got to tell you, I've heard this in many corners in Canada, in the United States, in the West. It still has to be a one-state solution, according to them. These haters don't want peace in the region. The amazing thing is, Stuart, is if you look forward, if you look at areas historically that revived itself through economics, the societies were better. But if you can't explain to people. If people don't understand what the benefits are and what's going on here, it ain't going to work. And if people are not going to be willing to embrace change, it's not going to work. And the problem is, Stuart, that Hamas has already deployed itself back into Gaza. We saw thousands of them immediately rush in. They again, instead of showing, dressed up in military garb as they were supposed to per the Geneva Convention, they walked around in civilian clothing. They renamed themselves the Gaza Security Force, not Hamas. They shot and killed people who they thought were traitors, including an influencer who for 2 years was lambasting Israel, which is hilarious in its own right. And yet, what is the future going to hold? Future cannot be positive if only one side wants it. It's, this is a marriage of inconvenience. I get it. I get it. No, both sides are mad at the other. I get it. And I'm being very, cheeky about the way I'm saying it. But here we go again. Hamas is threatening again. They have learned nothing. They're playing games again. The countdown to the next Jewish massacre has already begun. That's what they're putting out there into social media, into the people. They've learned nothing. So the only thing I could say to Mr. Trump and the people who are going to Sharm el-Sheikh to do this in Egypt, don't give in to the terrorists. Don't be naive. Qatar has pulled the wool over your eyes and has somehow got you to believe that they're peacemakers. Sure. Okay. Turkey, who's been calling, Erdogan has been calling for Israel's destruction. Sure. You've got a bunch of people who hate Israel at that table. Trump's shown he can support and be a leader for Israel. Now the question is, with all of those haters at the table, Stuart, what's going to come out? Because Israel, every time Israel takes a first step, she gets hurt. This time she didn't take a first step. And she's still going to get hurt because Hamas is redeployed. Hamas continues to demand, even during these little hostages, they played games who should be released to the last second. They reneged on this deal until they got their arm twisted. Stuart, I hope and pray that the future of the region is quiet. Peace, hopefully, maybe one day, but let's hope for some quiet.
And that brings us to another podcast to a close. We truly appreciate you joining in. We're here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern, except when we don't want to. Catch us on our website. Catch us on all the verticals. Yep, David, we want to be here. All right. Take care, guys.